Indeed, that's correct, David. And maybe coming on to Seuvin, he is speaking to us in his personal capacity. But I must tell you, he's a proud South African who is also a global citizen of the world. And Seuvin, perhaps we can get into the panel discussion that you managed to moderate yesterday. You had the privilege of moderating a panel discussion on new models for developmental finance. Walk us through that. How did that come about, and what are the key findings that came out of the discussion?
Gugu, thank you. I'm attending as a young global leader this year, and part of our role is also to participate across the forum. So this panel on new models for development finance is actually a theme running through the entire forum. I kicked off that theme on day one, just exploring the new ways in which finance across the world, particularly in economic development, is evolving. And here are some of the big themes. There's an acknowledgement that as economic power, as growth shifts from north to south, from west to east, the winds of change regarding both particularly development aid is changing in the world. Just to give you some statistics, foreign direct investment, and depending on your source, the numbers can vary a bit. But one of the numbers touted here is that DFI into emerging markets, development, direct foreign investment, is around 620 billion. Aligned to that is development aid into emerging markets runs around about north of 100 billion. But remittances, as an example, is north of 300 billion. So part of the discussion is that emerging markets have incredible workforces around the world funneling money back into the continent. So the new themes is how do we harness these to change the dialogue of development finance to say there are other sources and they need to work together. So that's point one. The second point is the emergence of the BRIC countries as donors, moving from the status of recipients to the journey of becoming donors themselves. And so there's also acknowledgement of that changing nature of it as the world evolves. The net is that the nature of economic development and finance is changing in the world regarding who is able to drive what investment. And so that was the theme of how this evolved.
Just on that, Seuvin, how does that perhaps translate into positive economic growth for a lot of the BRICS nations? We know that, you've US and the UK is picking up, but unfortunately we're taking a little bit longer to come out of the woods just yet. So what would it take for us to reach sustainable levels of positive economic growth?
Look, that's probably the gist, of one of the big themes coming out of this forum. And I think one of the big messages here, and the beauty and magic that happens here, is that it's one of the few places in the world in which the public sector, the private sector, and civil society can come together. So one answer is that the solution does not lie in any particular sector, but across the sectors. How do we translate that into particular action? And so I think a big theme that I've enjoyed discussing across the sectors is that of risk sharing. How can the different industries, different sectors come together and share risk? And so on the DFI side, it's really their role as possible equity investors. For financial services institution, it's about partnering across the board. And for civil society, it's their role at this forum, and there's great presence from civil society to keep the dialogue going and reminding people it's really about impacting lives on the ground at the end of the day. So impact investing is very much a part of that dialogue and has emerged as a theme.
You're a young global leader. You also spent about 10 years in Boston, but you're proudly South African at that. What do you make perhaps of the Pan-Africanist movement that we're seeing? Just yesterday we heard some analysts saying that an investment into South Africa is investment for Africa, and likewise when it takes place in another country. Is this a positive shift that we're seeing perhaps, that the lines that divide the states are slowly being erased?
Look, one of the big messages, and it's great, we attended a breakfast in which members of the cabinet as well as business leaders got together from South Africa and Africa, is the Pan-African view that it's not about a particular region, but it is about Africa Inc. and also South Africa Inc. in that perspective. The message coming out of certainly the dialogues I have been in is that South Africa remains a very important player, not just as a stepping stone, but as an active player in playing a role to shape and support the dialogue. Impact investing in particular is particularly important. I want to focus on that. And there's a fantastic definition in Davos regarding what this means. It's intentional, impactful, and investment that can be measured for folks on the ground. And the use of technology has sprung to the fore regarding how that is making an impact on entrepreneurs' lives. Africa is coming through as an example in which the leapfrogging of mobile technology, empowering our entrepreneurs to really get into the development of apps, be it in Kenya, be it in South Africa, to really participate in that. So payment systems, again within the theme of development finance, like M-Pesa, Africa is being seen to as an example for the rest of the world to learn from and take. And it's really fantastic to see us as being a part of that dialogue.